All righty. So let's get into our class. Let's go ahead and begin with a word of prayer. Dear God, our Father, we thank you so much for this extra time that we get to come together and study your word. And God, as we study the book of Daniel tonight, we ask that you would open our hearts to receive the lessons that you have intended for us to learn from your servant Daniel and his friends, from the prophecies that you gave, and from how you acted in this story. And we know you've preserved this for us so that we can learn, that we can gain wisdom, and that we can serve you better and follow you as you would have us, Lord. So I pray you would be with us tonight as we study. Be with all who are here today and help us to use the lessons that we learn from this in our lives throughout this week. In Jesus' name, amen. And by the way, any song leaders that want to use our little prelude time for teaching a new song, I think that's a good use of the fact that we're all together here. So just shoot me a text before or Nathan, and you can absolutely do that. That would be great. So we are picking up in Daniel chapter 2. I think most of you are here, but if you weren't, we'll recap just briefly. We open up in Daniel chapter 2, and we have a very troubled king of the entire world. So we have Nebuchadnezzar, very, very troubled, very anxious. We kind of have the picture of the natural things that somebody who has is early in their reign over the most powerful nation in the whole world. He's anxious about his throne. He's anxious about securing his kingdom, and God sends him some very troubling dreams. He sends for every wise person in the land. It's kind of hyperbole how he says it. Magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and Chaldeans. Everybody, anybody who could have any wisdom for interpreting this dream, he calls them together. And as you all know the story, none of them can do it. He not only wants them to interpret the dream, he wants them to tell him what the dream was to begin with. Which the magicians and enchanters and Chaldeans respond and say that no one has ever asked of someone to do that. Nobody could ever do that. And in fact, the only ones who could do that is the gods. And does anybody remember what he says about the gods right there? Only a god could do that, and their dwelling is not with man. And we made the point out of that. That it's kind of like it's teed up there by the enemies of God to say, oh, by the way, our God does dwell with us. And so that's kind of what we've been coming to. Daniel acts with prudence and discretion. We see his wisdom again and how he responds. Goes out on a limb of faith and says, wait, don't kill everybody. Don't kill me. Set me an appointment with the king. I'm going to interpret the dream. And he does it before he's even had the dream revealed to him. So he goes out on a limb of faith. He prays a great prayer of faith to God that he would reveal, and God comes through for him. And we got down pretty much through verse 30 in chapter 2, and we're getting all the way to the point of Daniel interpreting the dream to Nebuchadnezzar. But can anybody tell me what stood out to you about this section right before where we're going to start in 31, about how Daniel approaches Nebuchadnezzar?
My feeling is having confidence that he serves a God to be able to be the one to interpret this.
Yeah, and to that point, who's going to interpret this? God, not Daniel, right? So Daniel's coming, he has this confidence before him, but he comes out and says it, and even with kind of a long preamble to say, I can't interpret this dream at all, no human could, but actually there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Anything else that jumped out to you from the section right before we're getting into tonight?
I still like that part where he says that not only tell the dream, but he also told him it's also in his mind before he had the dream. And so it's very clear that Daniel knows what was going on that night. So God is revealed to him.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, he goes far above and beyond the already ridiculous request that Nebuchadnezzar has, and he's like, "I can even tell you what you're worried about, buddy." And that's what his dream is going to have to do with. A really important thing to pull out is just that, and we kind of already said it, but in verse 28, that he describes him as the God in heaven, or the God of heaven, who reveals mysteries. The whole point of this story is not that God is trying to hide something from people, right? God is actively trying to reveal. We often talk about God as very mysterious, but God, our God, compared to the God especially then, their gods were very, very mysterious. They didn't give any real information to man. But Yahweh here stands out as he is the God who reveals. He's not the God that confuses. He's not the God that keeps everything shrouded, but rather that he reveals. And he is intentionally revealing this to Nebuchadnezzar. Anybody remember, what did we point out about reasons why God would be revealing this to Nebuchadnezzar? Why God is telling the future and interesting things about his kingdom to the pagan king of the world? Why would he do that?
So that he's in control, that he's the one that establishes nations and brings nations down.
Absolutely. So young Nebuchadnezzar, at the beginning of his reign here, God is coming in and saying, "Hey, who gave this to you?" There's some humbling to be done on Nebuchadnezzar's part, as we'll see. And he's coming in here and letting him know, yes, who establishes kingdoms, who it is that does this. What other reasons would there be that God would reveal this to Nebuchadnezzar at this time specifically? Think about the other characters that are here. Who else does he want to influence who else is God wanting to influence with this other than Nebuchadnezzar?
I would think the Christians and stuff. I mean, all of those people who can't.
Absolutely, absolutely. So showing God's power and God's servants' power over the servants of these other deities. Yeah, and you're going to teach a lesson to all of them about who it is that's in control and who's in power. Yeah, Pete, you had something?
Well, the process I see is show that the kingdom is done this way.
And so who's the audience there that needs to know about that?
Well, we for one right now.
Yeah, so us, and in this time, yeah, the Israelites. So it's really interesting. You have this whole story so far. Remember, he set it up to show the Israelites, hey, this was me. I gave you into Nebuchadnezzar's hands. I gave the vessels of the temple to him. It wasn't the other way around. And guess what? I'm going to come and I'm going to work his mouth like a puppet to reveal to you what's going to happen in this kingdom that we only know bits and pieces about, and we learn a whole lot more about, very interestingly, through the pagan kings of that time. So I think it really, in an amazing way, shows God's power, and just very interesting how he decides to reveal not only to Nebuchadnezzar, but to the people of Israel. Anything else? Okay, let's dig in. We've got Daniel before the king here, starting in verse 31. Let's start with just reading 31 down through 35. Would somebody read that there?
As you, O king, were watching, a great statue appeared. A great and dazzling statue stood before you, and its form was awesome. The head of the statue was pure gold, its chest and arms were silver, its belly and thighs were bronze, its legs were iron, and its feet were part iron and part clay. As you watched, a stone was cut out, but not by human hand. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and crushed them. Then the iron, clay, bronze, silver, and gold were shattered and became like chaff on the threshing floor in summer. The wind carried them away, and not a trace of them could be found. But the stone that had struck the statue became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This was the dream. Now we will tell the king its interpretation.
That's good there. You could stop right there. Well, let's just make some quick observations from this short section here, and then we'll go ahead and add in the rest of it. What do you guys notice? What's interesting so far about what Daniel reveals and how he reveals it? Take all the time you need. If you need to look back through it, this isn't an awkward pause. This is a searching pause.
He hasn't really told him what it means. He only had told him what he saw.
Yeah. So first, he's got to tell him what the dream was. So that was the first requirement done, and so he's revealed that. What else do you guys notice? Just anything interesting that jumps out? Yeah, it's weird and weird, and not only weird. How is at least what is seen in the dream described? It's very detailed. Yeah, this isn't like maybe something random or vague or anything like that. Yeah, very detailed. What else? It was frightening. Yeah, so now we get a little bit of insight into why Nebuchadnezzar is so crazy about getting this dream interpreted, so much that he's going to, rip all these people to pieces for not being able to do it and that kind of thing. It's frightening. You have this big, scary statue. It's mighty and of exceeding brightness, and its appearance is frightening. So we get a little bit more insight now into, now we start to understand why it is Nebuchadnezzar is acting the way he is and is so adamant about getting this interpreted. What else do you notice in this section?
Mm-hmm. In verse 31, your last word is frightening.
Uh-huh.
See, mine says awesome.
Yeah, okay.
So, to me, I was wondering where you were getting the fear. Because
yeah, so ESV translates that frightening. But still, either way, awesome, something that inspires awe. What is part of the reason that standing at the edge of a cliff is so awesome? It invokes fear, right? Usually things that we call awesome, there is an element of fear and recognition of the sheer power over you that thing has. So whatever interpretation you go by there, frightening, awesome, there's that, the word awful is not even that far off of awesome. So similar meanings, I think, in all of that. What else do you guys see?
like the worth of it as you go down, the bottom is gray.
Yeah. So it becomes kind of less precious and more muddied as you go down, not as pure. Yes, Richard.
I think for me it's the image of a human that is there because you can see the head and everything like that. But what more stands out is that the fact that what destroys it is something that is cut from the rock that is not man. So in other words, you can start to allude to go, well, here's the human form you can see, but something that's not related to man is destroying it.
Yeah, absolutely. And how, that was one of the things I wanted to pull out here. How is that stone described? You've got a man, you got an image of a man here, but then, as Richard said, what is special about this stone? Yeah, a stone gets cut out not by human hands. So we have something that's likened to these other things, but this isn't created by men, right? This is something that's cut out not by no human hand. Yeah, and how does it describe the pieces? What ultimately happens to it?
It became like chaff, like it would blow away.
Mm-hmm.
It's like vinyl.
Yeah, and not just chaff that of the summer threshing floor, the wind carried away, so that not a trace could be found of it, right? So it's not just they kind of got broken, they kind of got shattered and maybe like split apart into little segments. No, this is destroyed. It's going to get blown away like chaff. And then what happens to the stone? Yeah, this supernatural stone then actually grows and becomes a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Anything else from this section? We're going to dig into all of these, obviously, but anything else that jumps out to you just from the section so far? All right, let's go ahead and dig in to 36 down through 45. Who can read that for me? I got it back here.
This was the dream. Now we will tell the king its interpretation. You, O king, the king of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, and the might, and the glory. Into whose hand he has given, wherever they dwell, the children of man, the beasts of the field, and the birds of the heavens, that you rule over them all. You are the head of gold. Another kingdom inferior to you shall arise after you, yet a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. There shall be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, because iron breaks to pieces and shatters all things. And like iron that crushes, it shall break and crush all things. And as he saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it shall be a divided kingdom. But some of the firmness of iron shall be in it, just as he saw iron mixed with the clay. And as the toes and the feet were partly iron and partly clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle. As he saw the iron mixed with soft clay, so they will mix with one another in marriage, but they will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever. Just as you saw that a stone was cut from a mountain by no human hand, that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold. A great God is made known to the king what shall be after this. This dream is certain, and its interpretation sure.
Okay, thank you. So before we get into, interpreting, what is meant by what in these different kingdoms and all that, just want to go again through some discovery here. So tell us what you see here. What is interesting and jumps out to you about this section and how Daniel reveals this? Okay, so again, where is this from? The vision is from the God of heaven, and that same God of heaven is doing what? He's kind of an actor in the vision, right? Yeah, so the same God of heaven that's revealing this is going to set up this kingdom. He's behind the rock, the stone that becomes the mountain. Excellent. What else do you guys see?
It actually tells them right at the start, God put you in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, this dream is telling you that God put you where you are.
Exactly. So there's again that piece of why is God revealing this? Partly to humble Nebuchadnezzar and make him to recognize his place. God is the one who put him in that position. What else do you see? Yeah, Pete.
Again, the detail here, and it's not random as far as not having an order. There's order what is how this will go through. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Absolutely. There's a lot of detail. This is prophetic. This isn't vague. There's different ways it can be interpreted, yes, but it's pretty specific. And we also kind of see a general pattern to it, a pattern that can probably be applied to a lot of human history. Absolutely. Yeah, what else do you see? How does anybody think it's interesting? How does Daniel address Nebuchadnezzar? Yeah. Interesting. Who do you usually think of when you hear King of Kings? Yeah. We're usually thinking about God when we hear King of Kings, but he gives him kind of this honorific title here, King of Kings. Also recognizing, how are all of these kingdoms are described as ruling like how much? Like a little bit, A lot of it, all of them, it says they're ruling the whole earth. Is it, the entire earth? Okay, no. But the hyperbole there is, they're the powerhouse in the known world at this time. That's who, they're over everything. So it's right that he calls him King of Kings. He's the king over all the other little kings, pretty much in the known world at that point in time. What else do you guys see in this section?
God made him king. There's going to be three kingdoms that follow him, and God's going to set up another kingdom in the fourth kingdom. God's always there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I think that's a really important theme that goes throughout this, based on Nebuchadnezzar's kind of seeming interpretation of it. I mean, have you ever thought there's any coincidence that what does Nebuchadnezzar turn around after this and create in the next chapter? A giant statue, and it's all gold. Just me, by the way. I'm gonna. You get the idea. He's trying to just force it so that he just gets to be the one that sticks around. He gets to be in control for always. But I mean, what do we know about kings of this world? You're not going to keep your power, Nebuchadnezzar. That's an excellent point. None of them are going to keep their power, by the way. It will always be left to somebody else. There's some like Ecclesiastes in there, I think. You can't keep it. You can't hold on to this no matter how hard you try. What else jumps out to you in this section?
Well, it's interesting because it's almost like it's what we see in the world and what we see in history. Some kingdoms are really strong, some are powerful but not as strong as the kingdom that went before it, and then it seems like you've kind of got an up and down pattern. Absolutely.
And I think that kind of to Cameron's point before, along with that, you have almost an ordained cycle of nations that rule over a certain area. One that's really, really great. I mean, Babylon it's Babylon. Nobody's ever going to quite be like Babylon again. And as you go down, you have degrading morals, degrading riches. Although you've got a lot of power coming in later, it isn't with the refined might. And I mean, we say that. I mean, what do we always say about even the United States? Oh, it's founded on morals, and those have just gone away over the years. And we see the same thing happening throughout time with different nations. Okay, let's dig into it here, and talk a little bit about what these may represent and what we should be taking away from it. You may know somebody who's studied this or not studied this, but isn't a preacher. What did you find on what are these different nations representing? We got number one, right? Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon is the head of gold. What would be part two? Yeah, so the traditional view, then we have the Medo-Persian Empire, which makes sense because what do we, flip over a couple pages. Who's the king that Daniel's serving when he gets thrown into a lion's den? Darius the Mede, yeah, yeah. So you've got you've already, even just within the life of Daniel, the head of gold is gone, and in there are some different interpretations of this. The traditionalist view is that part two would be the Medo-Persian Empire. Then what's next? Yeah, so Greece. There's some reasons behind that as well. The non-traditional view would be Babylon, and then the Persian, and then the Median Empire and the Persian Empire, and then that Greece is this ultimate one that's so powerful. There's some ways that I could see that. There's a lot of ways that I think this would be it, at least because Daniel Well, we'll talk about that in just a second. And then what's the last one? If the third is Greece, then what would the last one be? It would be Rome, yeah. And what about this sounds like it would fit Rome? How does he? What are all the? How all is the legs of iron described? Or what does the iron do? Yeah, it smashes and breaks to pieces all thing. Kind of sounds like the Roman Empire in a lot of ways. And then the legs and the toes there would then symbolize, at least if it's the Roman Empire, all of the political turmoil that comes in towards the end of the Roman Empire that makes it not very strong and eventually leads to its failure. So here we have the statue. We got the head of gold, the silver, the bronze, and then we have this supernatural rock coming and destroying it and breaking it all in pieces. So how should we view the kingdoms? A few different things we'll go through here. This type of language, so you know, is not uncommon in literature found during that period, where you have nations compared to different types of metals, where you have statue imagery and that kind of thing. So there's bits and pieces in literature from these areas that kind of can help us tie these things together. Babylon is described as golden in other places within the Bible, also back in those times, as I understand. The Persians were well known for their silver coinage, so it makes sense that they would be the silver empire there. And then Josephus even calls Alexander the Great a king from the west clad in bronze. So not crazy for us to, their armies would be going out in bronze armor. So it kind of makes sense that would line up with Greece. Rome, less obvious connection, but we start out with a strong iron and then it's diluted by the time we get to the toes. Then the internal government chaos that happens there that ends up leading to the fall of Rome. So things make sense there. A couple just general questions. The Medes and the Medo-Persian Empire, like I had started to mention, there's a non-traditional view that would take it to be the Median Empire and then the Persian Empire and then Greece being the last one, which Greece makes a lot of sense with the fact that he mentions a lot of intermarriage, making it weak and those kinds of things. Still could be taken either way. But an important thing that I think supports viewing this as the Medo-Persian Empire throughout the rest of Daniel and those references that you can see there, it's always referred to as one entity, as more of a Medo-Persian Empire. The laws of the Medes and the Persians are referenced. So that kind of places those together as one. Yeah, Pete.
If I can jump ahead a little
Yeah.
bit, there in the 8th chapter, verses 20 and 21, those nations are mentioned. The ram and the goat. The ram being Medes and Persians and the goat Greece.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have those two singled out, and those kind of seem like they would line up. And then the other question is a little bit more of a direct link is chapter 7, which, as we talked about last time, in the structure of this, chapter 2 and chapter 7 are set up to kind of mirror each other here, and both talk about fours. We got 4 kingdoms here, and we've got 4 kings in Daniel 7, and they seem to line up pretty well here. Then my question at the end of this is whether it's these specific 4 or these specific 4 or one a little over the other. The question is, does it matter? Exactly, perfectly. For the purposes of Daniel's revelation here, does it matter that it's exactly this kingdom, and this kingdom, and that king right there? Why not? Or I guess I'm seeing shaking heads.
The whole point is that the kingdoms on earth don't matter if the kingdom is coming that never ends.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that's the whole point and the takeaway of this is not necessarily exactly which one win, but which one wins ultimately in the end. And what's the fate of every single nation there? They're destroyed or they lose their power, and somebody else takes it. They don't get to keep it. Yeah.
Counter argument.
Yeah.
Prophecy, if it's perfect from God, is perfect, so it doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
That it's accurate.
That's the next point we're getting to, is that it does matter. It does matter. And we can pretty well narrow this down to one pretty strong view and then a slightly different view that I think still works out very perfectly.
Just
Yeah.
because we don't understand it doesn't mean it's not.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think later on we get into sections that are, I think, intended to more detail, more like amazingly detailed human history long before it happens. But the purpose here in this is what happens to the kingdom that exalts itself against God. This is what happens to the hubris, the look at me, I'm going to try to keep my power, you can't. You're going to lose it. Within a couple kings of Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon's already lost it. And ultimately, it's God's kingdom that is going to come and destroy all of this and last forever. So really important here, I think, is this stone imagery, and I think we can learn a lot from it. Just real quickly, we'll kind of come back to this idea and talk about it more in application. But where have we heard about the stone before? I know there's references up here, but can you think of one? Some words, some phrases from other places in the Old Testament, which I mentioned. I'm getting ahead of myself. I mentioned that these images of the different types of metals and the statue, those would all be familiar to an ancient Near Eastern audience. But what it would not be familiar at all is this image of the stone. But who is that image familiar to? Not the Persians and the Babylonians and all that, but well,
I guess the uncut stone would be an image familiar.
I guess a stone image at all. I wasn't going there, no. Exactly. So we look back in Isaiah and in the Psalms, we have Jesus being referred to as a stone. So just to kind of briefly go there without spending a bunch of time there, Isaiah 28:16, that's where you have the stone laid as a foundation. It's tested, and that's the cornerstone that's going to be built upon. In Isaiah 8, you have the idea there from that they would stumble on it. And then in Psalm 118:22, that's where we have the stone that the builders rejected becoming the chief cornerstone. So a Jewish audience that hears about the stone that comes and crushes these kingdoms that are oppressing us, what do they think about? Yeah, they think about their prophecy and who are they looking forward to in this stone? Yeah, the Messiah. They would already have those connections in their mind, and if they didn't, then in the New Testament we have those connections. That stone imagery is drawn from heavily. Acts, Romans, 1 Peter, then again in Hebrews 12, we have it mentioning this stone. So this isn't just talking about nation. We also have this allusion to the Messiah that's coming in here. That's what's coming and starting this destruction of all of this, and that's then going to grow into a mountain. So, what's this pivotal idea introduced in verse 44 with this stone that comes in and then grows into a mountain? Yeah, so there's an eternal kingdom that's going to come. And what else about it? It's eternal. God's going to establish it, yes. Compared to the other kingdoms, what's What's different about this kingdom?
Destroy these other kingdoms.
Okay, so it's very powerful. It's going to destroy them, and thus saying, okay, well, how is this nation different that's going to be set up? It's not going to be destroyed, right? It's going to be everlasting. It, in fact, is part of destroying the others. What else?
Got the idea of no human hand, and that it's godly. It's not an earthly kingdom.
Yeah. It didn't start from here. Its origins are somewhere else. A man didn't start it. Remember when we started this, we pointed out that Daniel's very specifically written to remind the Jew about the Tower of Babel, right? So that's, again, man's tower, man's nation that he's trying to create, but this is going to be God's. It's beginning from a stone that he cut out himself. He's setting up this nation. It's not of this world. What else? Yeah.
Different nature, not stone, it's not something human hands or whatever. It's like, stone doesn't have a lot in common with these other metals.
Yeah, those are all metals that are, I guess, wrought by humans, right? They have to be refined into that. But this is a stone, it's a virgin stone kind of cut out of a mountain that this is going to happen with. Yeah. Thank you. All of these others, they get left to somebody else. Nebuchadnezzar, you're not going to keep your throne. It's going to be left to another. But this is a kingdom that's not ever going to be left to anybody else.
Stone, mountain, all that is coming together in regard to this event that the Lord is planning for Israel and for all mankind.
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't even get into the mountain imagery, which we have a lot of. And there's also, I'm forgetting the chapter, but the prophecy that on the mountain of the Lord, there's going to be this feast, that kind of the messianic feast that's going to be happening on the mountain of the Lord that it's looking forward to. What else do we learn about the kingdom? Maybe that'd be a better way to ask this question. What do we learn about the kingdom from this?
Which kingdom?
The kingdom of God, God's kingdom. Yeah. Yeah, so it's eternal. We've got some of the things that we've already mentioned. But anything else that we learn from it here, if you look there? Okay, it fills the whole earth, which, wow, okay, it's going to fill the whole earth, as opposed to contrasting to these kingdoms that have ruled the whole earth. This mountain's going to fill the whole earth. Does it start that way, though? Yeah, no, it starts as a rock that comes and destroys this statue, but then it grows to fill the whole earth. And when we read it just like this, it sounds like, boom, this all just happens all at once. What other analogies for the kingdom expand on this later on? Yeah, so the parable of the mustard seed, right? We start out tiny. We have a tiny little mustard seed, but then what happens? You have this massive tree that provides shade. And what else? There's another parable Jesus gives that kind of teaches the same lesson about the kingdom. It's right there with the parable of the mustard seed, if you can remember. Yeah, the parable of the leaven. Yeah, and that's all going to be in Matthew 13, I think. We'll get there. What else do we learn about the kingdom here? Anything else you can see down here at the end of this here? There's a key one we haven't touched on yet. How about timing? Yeah, so now we know a little bit about when this is going to happen, right? This is kind of where the Jews would be getting their expectation of the Messiah coming during that time. We see a lot of people in the Gospels who are described as waiting for the kingdom. They're kind of, you can see the anticipation is there. They know that this should be coming right now. Why? Because we seem to be in the age of the fourth kingdom, right? So timing, that's what Daniel, the book of Daniel gives us here a lot of, is when this Messiah is going to come. Yeah, so just making sure we got all of these. And then Hebrews 12, let's look at Hebrews 12. I think this is a big one for us to pull some lessons out of for what we can learn from this here. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Somebody, if you would read Hebrews 12, 25 through 29.
I'll read it if you let me back up to 22.
Go for it. Oh, yeah, sorry. That's what I meant. I wrote down 25 instead of 22. Oh, that's because it's up there. Yeah. I meant to start at 22.
You have come from Mount Zion to the city of the living God, heavenly Jerusalem, to an innumerable company of angels, to the general assembly and church of the firstborn who are registered in heaven. To God, the judge of all, to the spirits of just men made perfect, to Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of sprinkling that speaks better things than that of Abel. See that you do not refuse him who speaks, so that they do not escape who refused him who spoke on earth, but more shall not we escape, if we turn from him who speaks from heaven, whose voice then shook the earth, but now he has promised, saying, yet once more I shake not only earth, but also the heaven. Now this, yet once more, indicates the removal of those things that have been shaken, as if the things that are made, but the things which cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken. Let us have grace by which we may serve God acceptably with reverence and godly fear. Our God is consuming fire.
Okay, so we get this idea kind of pulled from the same idea of the mountain here, that is the city of the living God. And what does Hebrews kind of expand on for us here about that kingdom? About its nature, or that goes right along with what Daniel's saying. Okay, yeah, it's spiritual. It's of God. It's of the Spirit. Yeah. What else? It's unshakable. Yeah. So back here we've got nations that can be destroyed by a rock, and this is the one that's unshakable. This is the one that is not going to be destroyed. We can have confidence in it, right? We see a Nebuchadnezzar that does not have confidence. Do we feel like I guess maybe in times past Americans have felt like they could have confidence in the nation. Do we feel like we can have confidence in it now? No, we don't. Or if you do, I sincerely recommend that you check that. And I think that's something that we need to be learning from this. This is a kingdom that's unshakable, unlike the nations of men. What do you see right along with this talking about the mountain, talking about the stone? In 1 Peter, when he's talking about the stone that the builders rejected, he goes right into a similar thing. What would you call what the Hebrew writer is doing in verse 25? Yes, okay, personification. I was just going to say giving a warning, right? So the Jews that are hearing that would be hearing this about this stone that was going to come and destroy the other ones, turn into a mountain. What do we know about the Jews' interaction with that stone later? They reject it, right? And I think there's a lesson there for us. And when we talk about, okay, how are we going to interact with the stone when we come to the stone or the mountain? If the Jews could end up, with all of this, still end up rejecting it, do we have are we in danger of that? Always, absolutely. That's the warning we see. And interestingly, every spot that the stone or the mountain imagery is picked up on in the New Testament seems to come along with a similar warning. Be careful. In Romans 9, he says, it mentions, okay, why did the Jews not get it? Why did they stumble and fall? It's because they pursued it. They didn't pursue it by faith. They pursued it as if it was by works that they should be pursuing it. In 1 Peter, he says they missed it because of disobedience. So we have this idea of pursuing the kingdom not by works, but rather by faith and obeying God and trusting in Him, being necessary to accept this stone. Yeah, Pete.
Along with what Audrey was saying is spiritual. They stumble on it because they were looking for a physical.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And can you blame them? Maybe, yes, no. There's some reason that seem like it. I mean, you should have gotten the idea that this is spiritual, this is from God, but it said it was going to be a mountain that filled the whole earth, right? Not understanding exactly how that was going to happen, I think, is somewhat understandable in a way. And then timing-wise, just so we know that, okay, this kingdom does start in the time of Jesus. All the Gospels allude to that. Mark 9, Jesus says that they will be alive when they see these things happen. And the beginning of Mark, John's message is that the kingdom of God is at hand. So we know that's kind of when that is happening. And we don't have to get into this a ton, but is there agreement in the religious world about how Daniel 2:44 is fulfilled and how that kingdom is coming? No, there's a lot of different ideas, and it's kind of beyond the scope of this class to get into a bunch of premillennialism and all that kind of thing. But the idea here is this already but not yet idea. You have a stone that comes, but it's this slow-growing stone that becomes a great mountain. We've already mentioned the parables of the mustard seed and the leaven from Matthew 13. So then the question is, what will you do with the stone? Luke 20, again, referencing these same passages we've gone through. You could stumble on it and be crushed by it. 1 Peter 2, we need to have faith in the living stone, and in that we'll become ourselves living stones built up into a spiritual house. And then, drawing from the same imagery, that's going to fill the whole earth. That's going to... as the gospel has gone and filled the whole earth and will continue to grow. So we'll kind of come back to a couple lessons from all that at the end. Let's finish out this section here in 46 through 49. Who can read that for us?
Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and paid homage to Daniel, and commanded that an offering and incense be offered up to him. The king answered and said to Daniel, "Truly your God is God of gods and Lord of kings, and a revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this mystery." And the king gave Daniel high honor and many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. Daniel made a request of the king. He appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon, but Daniel remained at the king's court.
Okay, so kind of in answering this question, and just want to hear from you all, what's interesting about Nebuchadnezzar's reaction and how this story resolves here? What jumps out to you?
I think it's pretty interesting how he was so ready to just kill everybody, basically, and now he's turning parts of his kingdom over and has Daniel in his court. That kind of just, I guess, people who may be skeptical in that time, it kind of just goes to show and prove that what Daniel did was real.
Absolutely. Something miraculous has to have happened here. In case they made all of this up, everybody heard his decree that he was going to kill all of the wise men in Babylon, and all of a sudden now he's bowing down to one. Something very miraculous happened here. What else?
Well, it's interesting how Daniel called him King of Kings, and now he's talking about your God being the God of gods and the Lord of kings.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Daniel calls him King of Kings, and then something so, earth-shattering to happens to where Nebuchadnezzar then turns around and calls the real God, God of gods and Lord of kings. It's almost like Nebuchadnezzar saying, no, you're right. I'm not king. I've got a lot of power, yeah, but this is who's really in charge. This guy being humbled in this way is amazing. What else do you all see? Yeah, you get the idea that he's just like doing things. Daniel can't even do anything about it at this point. It doesn't stop and say that Daniel said, "Oh wait, don't worship me." I'm sure that was in there, knowing what we know of Daniel's character.
Really a little different word, I think, especially homage.
Yeah.
Homage is not a worshipful type thing. It may seem like that at first, of course, we fell down to it, but it's just like he's blessing him or giving him praise, giving him honor.
No, I agree, definitely. And it's the burning incense to him that got me over. But no, I agree. It may be a different situation than, because Daniel has made it very clear who this is coming from. And we can see that does Nebuchadnezzar understand who it came from? Yeah, he thinks he does. But yeah, he's not saying, "Oh, Daniel, you are the one." He's saying, truly your God is God of gods and a revealer of mysteries. Before Daniel has introduced the God of heaven as the revealer of mysteries, now Nebuchadnezzar also calls him the revealer of mysteries here. And so we get that point there that he uses the same kind of language as Daniel used, and attributes the same qualities that Daniel attributed to God back in his prayer, that he's the revealer of mysteries, that he is the one that does all of these things. But as we've said, does he really get it? We'll find out in a little bit here. And so what does what does he request from the king after all this? Yeah, so they haven't really been mentioned so much in the story other than he went and prayed with them and asked them to pray. But I think there's some wisdom to be learned from this. And he doesn't just take it for himself. He doesn't, use the notoriety that he has now to say, hey, let me go back to Israel. Let me get out of here. I don't want to have to work with you anymore. Probably would have granted whatever his request was, but rather he takes the opportunity to put other godly people in places of power where they can affect good for who? Like, why would you want Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the provinces? Yeah, they can probably help out things, some certain things to not happen to the people of God that are scattered among these people now. I mean, we see in the time of Esther, there's crazy things that happen, like, hey, you can go kill your Jewish neighbor if you want to, So he's wise and uses this opportunity to put godly people in these positions. And then where does Daniel end up? In the king's court. Yeah, he's put in this power, and I think maybe even you might even say he chooses to stay in this position where he can be influencing Nebuchadnezzar. He stays in the king's court. Could have left, could have run away, but then gets his friends as well, serving the Most High. Not just from what we covered today. I want to wrap up chapter 2, just hearing what lessons that you've noticed. Look back at the beginning of this, because there's a lot of lessons that we got last time. as well. What lessons jump out to you so far?
God is in control. That stands out like Christmas tree, both in the affairs of Daniel and in the affairs of Stephen, and ultimately in the affairs of Christian.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's the overall message here. He's in control over all of these different things. What other lessons?
This timeline isn't the same as ours.
Yeah, absolutely. Nebuchadnezzar is going to try to hold on to this power, and he's not going to get to. And nor do we get to decide that our timeline is what is going to work out. What else do you see?
Daniel and his friends, all the people of Israel are in Babylon because of the sin of the people in the land where they rejected God. And you would think, reading the end of the Bible, that God has just grown people up. Just even to themselves for 70 years, let them learn the lesson. Maybe I'll do something good. But all during these 70 years, he is working on them.
Absolutely. And I think that to the idea, that kind of brings me to what is the lesson that we learn from the fact that the kingdom is this slow growing kingdom that's kind of hard to see. And, you know, is it easy to feel like we've been left?
That's why I made the point about the timeline.
Yeah.
Expanded on a little bit, but we don't see always what is important may not happen in our lifetime. Probably won't. I mean, all the centuries that have gone by, God's plan.
Absolutely. And we're one part of that, but we can be sure and assured from stories like this that God is active and working in our time. He hasn't just left history to go on continuing. In fact, he is the one that orchestrates history. He is the one that is making this. His kingdom is growing now, even when it doesn't feel like it to us, even when we get discouraged, when we feel like exiles. First Peter draws a lot on this idea of exiles, which in turn draws a lot on kind of the concepts from Daniel as their exiles there. And then to us as exiles, people who are not truly a part of the nation that we're a part of. And I think that's a lot of the lessons that we need to learn there. What other lessons do you see before I say any of mine? Yeah.
Sometimes when we're in difficult circumstances, we think we shouldn't be there. And when we are in difficult circumstances, God may have a purpose for us in that, and we ought to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. What else? Yeah, Jim.
I like how God identifies the revealer of mysteries.
Absolutely. No, I love that too. That's one thing that stuck out to me a ton is it is easy to view God as one who shrouds things in more mystery, who obscures things sometimes, but that's not how he's described. In fact, he is unique in his ability to reveal and that he chooses to reveal to us so much.
There seems to be, I think it's maybe tied to this process there seems to be a lesson of humility, kind of playing out your little bit of mental kind of knowing where we're headed with him.
Mm-hmm.
But here's this mighty, powerful king over all of it. He's dreaming, last forever. Coming behind him. Yes, it's in the context of the bigger thing. There is a humility trying to come across. He is, even though he's a great king, powerful and mighty, he's just one small cog in the wheel of that thing.
Absolutely. And I think for us, even if you aren't sitting around thinking, oh, I have so much trust in the United States of America, still, we're probably not all sitting around recognizing, and we're pretty insulated from nations getting overthrown and getting taken over by other ones. But how quickly did it happen for Babylon? How quickly did it happen for Nebuchadnezzar? It's going to happen to the United States. It will not stick around forever. And that's really hard for us to, people who have never, it's been generations and generations since we even had, war on our soil with a different country. It's so far from us, but we have to recognize that this can happen to us. And if it does, and when it does, I should say, we will be okay. Our God is in control, and we can't get arrogant to think that it won't happen to us. Anybody else? Any other lessons that you're taking away from this? Okay, I think we've hit most of mine. One, man has great power, but it is still very, very limited. Man still has this ability to make the big statue and the big nations and all of these kinds of things. But the power is really from God in the first place, and it is so, so limited when you compare it to the power of the one who is behind it all. And then just what always happens to the strongest, proudest nation in the world, it gets brought low. It's going to happen to ours as well. God can do the impossible. We didn't really mention this so much, but Daniel could have reacted a lot of different ways when Arioch comes to knocking on his door to kill him. And he decides to go out on a limb of faith and pray to God that he can do the impossible that's already been stated that is completely impossible and nobody can do. This idea of Emmanuel, God with us, praise God, we have a God who decides to dwell with us in the way that he does now, but also in that he's revealed to us in this dream that he is setting up a kingdom in which we are going to be able to dwell with him truly, 100% all the way. We have a piece of it now, shreds of it now, but we will be able to dwell with him forever in his nation. And we worship a God who is a God that reveals, and then just remembering the nature of Christ's kingdom as we go along. It's the slow growing mountain stone tree. Don't mistake it. Don't make the mistake that the Jews and others and we can all make in expecting it to be something different than it is. It's always be coming back to the scriptures and saying what it says this kingdom should be, not our idea of what the kingdom should be, because otherwise we're going to be a part of the there's kind of a choice back in verse 35. You can either be part of the statue that turns into chaff that gets driven away and there's no trace of it ever again, or you can be a part of the mountain that fills the whole world. So what will you do with the stone? Thank you all.